Hi, I'm Mark Rushka. Welcome to my third video that attempts to show how the Mammoth People microlithic abstract art works. In the last two videos, I showed examples of opposing heads, which is the basic art form that the Mammoth People's ancient Stone Age microlithic abstract art figurative language hinges upon. I demonstrated how opposite-facing faces are to be imagined in your mind's eye as being face to face. They are, in essence, in each other's heads, thinking deeply of one another because they are sharing the backs of their heads. The opposing heads can be two humans, two animals, or simply imagined as predator and prey. I've seen examples of as many as 4 opposing heads on one side of an artwork. You simply rotate the rotational change-up artwork clockwise or counterclockwise from one head's image to the next. The commonality to all of their heads is that they share the backs of them in the middle of the artwork. The ones that are inverted to each other are considered to be at odds with each other. The other side of the artwork can show the other sides of the characters' heads and faces, or it can show entirely different characters that are opposing heads to them. They too are sharing one side of their heads, which also means that they are sharing the backs of their heads and are in essence in each other's heads, thinking deeply of one another, or experiencing the same moment in Pleistocene time. Let's take a look at another example of opposing heads. To help you see their imagery as the characters that they represent in the Mammoth People's epic folklore tale of the volcanic mass exodus, I will hold up their combined optical and cognitive illusion images to line sketch images that I sketched perhaps 6 or 7 years ago and that are compiled in my second book called Reflections from the Pleistocene, which is a companion book to the Sentient Mammoth People. So let's begin. First of all, I'm going to show you a large handheld knife scraper tool that I found at the Spanish diggings. This is a backed knife. In other words, this edge was rubbed off flat so that you could hold it with either hand with your index finger pushing against it to put pressure against the knife edge that's on the bottom and on the side over here. It's a sharp knife edge. It works equally well from both angles. You can just see it fits perfectly. And it's a very comfortable handheld tool. It's concave on the bottom, on the ventral side, and it has this bulbous point of percussion right here. It made it bulbous on the concave side, but the dorsal side has a very strong ridge. Doesn't look like anything much. Doesn't have much color, just gray, light dark, and light gray. But this piece has the volcanic scenes and imagery from the volcanic mass exodus on it. And what I'm going to do is first of all show you some of the imagery that I sketched perhaps 6 or 7 years ago to show you what that volcanic mass exodus stuff looks like. In this illustration, the madly marching waist-high young maiden blindly ran into a decrepit elderly herdswoman and knocked her down. She knocked the cane out from under and knocked her down. Imagine the madly marching waist-high maiden's face looking like this at the moment that she knocked her down. And just imagine blowing up and seeing her face extremely close up. And that's what you'd see right here. And basically, on this piece that I wrote up, the decrepit elderly herdswoman who was falling flat on her stomach was reflecting off the front of the madly marching or the shocked very young maiden, or waist-high maiden, after she ran into her. This happens in the middle of the Pleistocene night, and everything you see in this particular epic folklore tale is seen during a flash of lightning. So this is what it looks like before she ran into the decrepit elderly herdswoman. Crotchety grandma is pointing and yelling at her to go take her naughty kitty and go march out in front of her compassionate big brother and her dad, and where she wants to march out in front of her, where she can keep a glaring eyeball on them. But as she's marching towards the line of miserable, weary trekkers, I always call them the multitudes of the miserable, weary trekkers, she wasn't really paying any attention to where she was going because she was so busy scolding her kitty while she took big marching steps and swung her little arms wildly to and fro. Now I'm going to take you, I'm just trying to plant all this in your mind's eye before I actually show you. And I imagine this is a different folklore tale, but imagine what you're seeing is this elderly lady here, this lady as the elderly lady. And that, imagine if she had a cane and she was now either, about to get run into by, say, the waist-high maiden that looks like this at the moment of impact. She'd be shocked, like surprised. And I'm just going to use those as some examples to hold this artwork up against. So here's our large handheld back knife scraper. This is like rubbed off too, because when it pushes against the palm of your hand, so that it feels very comfortable. To start out, let's imagine that this is the right side view of the decrepit elderly herdswoman's hood-covered head. She's further away. Imagine that this is her mouth, her nose, her eyes. She's frowning because she's sad. She's leaning forward. Imagine her just like that. This is the front of the right side of her cape hood that's over her bonnet. She's a further away image. Imagine it just like that. Opposing her head would be the madly marching waist-high maiden, because they'd be coming towards each other. So if you just take a step back and view the whole thing, this is actually the left side of a much closer up image of the madly marching waist-high maiden. Her mouth is open, her nose, this is her eye. And this edge up here, above her forehead, is the invisible underside of her bonnet, like the frilled front edge of her bonnet. This would be, like up here where my finger is, would actually be the frilled front edge of her bonnet. Okay? Now imagine that they're getting closer and closer. The decrepit elderly herdswoman just sees her out of the corner of her right eye, and the waist-high maiden is going to blindly run into her. So I can either turn it this way to see the opposite, just like if I wanted to see the other side of the very young waist-high maiden's face, I bring it towards your gaze, and then onto your right, as if I want to see the right side of her face. And when I do that, you do. There's her pug nose. She's got a cape hood over her. It'd be almost just like what you see right here. And that's her pug nose, her mouth, her chin, her forehead. She is an opposing head to the decrepit elderly herdswoman. So we'd invert, and we know that they're at odds with each other, and all I have to do is this. And there is the extremely close-up image of her. Assuming that that's her, imagine she had a cane. Her face is white. It's lit up by the flash of lightning. And her hood is dark in this scene. Now watch. I'm going to turn her around and to look at the left side of her head, as if we're seeing the left side of her. So now this edge becomes the top, invisible top of her and her chest, because she's looking down. Believe it or not, this little image in here is the cognitive illusion reflection of the madly marching waist-high maiden when she's further away. I probably am going to have a hard time showing it, but it is her. It's like she's coming towards her. When I invert it, invert the whole thing, we morph back into her, to the waist high a maiden's extremely close-up image, to verify that that is her, and that the decrepit elderly herdswoman is rapidly coming towards her. She's rapidly marching, madly marching towards her, and coming towards her like this. We see her, the elderly herdswoman, reflecting off this side of her cape hood. This dark side here is, in other words, this is the cognitive illusion of the back top of the decrepit elderly herdswoman's shoulder. That's the back of her. She's bent forward, she's hunched over, leaning forward on her cane. She has a dark cape hood. And her face is lightning illuminated white. There's her right eye, her left eye, her nose, her open mouth, her chin, and her arm is up just like this, like if she was holding the cane. It's kind of hard to see, but all I got to do to verify that is flip it over and invert, and there you see in her, you're seeing her extremely close up now, exactly like you saw her reflection right here. Got it? So like if I just invert and flip it over, as if I was telling this story to my grandchildren, I could just zoom in. I could zoom into this reflection to show her close up. The way the wayside maiden actually sees her just before impact. They collide. You see it? That's her hood-covered head. Inverter. That's her far away. Turn it around. That's her face close up, with the reflection of the decrepit elderly herdswoman right there, just like that. I'm using a different illustration from a different theme, but the characters look identical to that. Got it? One more time. It's how opposing heads work. And then I could show one more thing. I think you might be able to see it. So there's the decrepit elderly herdswoman, and opposing her head, again, to reinforce it. They show several images of the same thing a lot of times, just to reinforce what they're trying to show, is her, the waist-high maiden's shocked-looking face is reflecting, I gotta turn it here, off the back of her hood. Like they're sharing the backs of their heads. Here's her face, close up, extremely close up, but this one's almost like a reflection of this is this. There's her open mouth, her eyes, her lightning illuminated white, childlike white face, and she's got the hood over her bonnet. Can you see her? Show it in a different angle. There's her left eye, right eye, and there's her mouth. And she's got a cape hood over her. So she's basically sharing the back of her head. They're sharing the same bonnet-covered head. They're in each other's heads experiencing the same miserable moment in Pleistocene time. Until next time.